Bass players ranging from beginners right through to advanced and professional level practice scales so that they can improve their neck knowledge, their dexterity and their technique. But for one reason or another, a lot of them struggle to do this because they don't know how to practice scales properly or because they don't have a lot of time to do it. So in this video, I'm going to show you 3 ways that you can get more out of your scale practice and how to do it in less time. So tip number 1 is to play scales horizontally as well as vertically on the neck. So what this means is that usually when we play scales, we play them in position like this. Now relative to the neck, we're moving in what we would call a vertical fashion, so basically up and down this way. In and of itself, this is good, but the thing is, we want to practice scales so we can better understand the neck as a whole, and doing this just keeps us in one area of it. So instead, take a scale, any scale that you know, like the major scale, minor scale, pentatonics, whatever it is, and then learn to play it in position like this, but also going up and down one single string. Look at how much more of the neck I cover by doing that scale in 2 different ways. Tip number 2 is to take a scale that you know and try and work it out in a new key every day, every week or every month, depending on how much time you have to practice. This one seems a little bit more abstract, but the reason why it's such a good idea is because working out a scale in a new key or a new area of the neck that you're not familiar with requires that you actually comprehend that scale rather than just trying to memorize it from a book. For example, if I wanted to work out my F major scale from 3rd fret of the D string and go up 1 octave in this horizontal fashion, yes, I need to be aware of the notes that are correct, but as soon as I make a mistake like that, I also need to be aware of the notes that are wrong and the relationship between right and wrong. This means that I become more actively engaged in actually learning the scale, and it becomes a much more meaningful task because I've got to comprehend what I'm doing. Whereas if I'm just trying to memorize a scale pattern, all I've got to do is regurgitate it. So just before we look at the last tip in this video, I want to pause here and say that if you're interested in this idea of comprehending scale patterns rather than just merely learning them, then check out this video I did up here on how you can learn your bass neck with only 3 scale shapes. It very much builds on this whole comprehension approach to scale positions. It's a very expansive exercise. It's a really great engaging way of learning your neck. But before you look at that video, let's check out the last tip from this lesson. Now tip number 3 is more of a classical approach to practicing scales, which is to use alternating combinations of either long, short notes, or short, long notes. So let me play you what I mean. I'll go long, short to start with. And then short, long. So why is this such a good way of practicing? Well, if you think about it, learning a new scale shape all over the neck is what we could call one large scale problem. So that means just internalizing the whole shape and all the different forms of it across the neck. It's a pretty big, difficult problem. But within that, there might be smaller problems, for example, skipping from one string to the next in the scale pattern, or using your pinky finger to play things like that. And all of those small problems add up to stop you from learning the big problem, which is the scale shape. So alternating long and short notes like this helps to bridge the gap because it blends quicker movements, which you will need to play the scale like this, with shorter movements that buy you a little bit more time to relax your hands, to think about what you're doing and prepare for the next step. And nowhere do you see the benefit of doing this more than playing a scale up 1 string. If you look at how I play this, the smaller micro problems in that are the position shifts I've got to do. Playing that on its own isn't that difficult, but shifting to here quickly is quite difficult, and then shifting to here again, back to here, and then back to here, that's tricky. So as well as practicing the finger patterns, I also need to practice the shifts. But if I play that in this short, long fashion, I can iron out the creases and solve those internal micro problems, which will allow me to play the whole thing much better. If you want to check out that video I mentioned before on how to master your bass neck with only 3 scale shapes, then click the card up here. If you found this useful and you think you're going to implement it in your practice, then by all means tell me about it, leave me comments and thumbs up down below. If you've enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing, and I'll see you again in another lesson real soon. Take care.